Welcome to the English Podcast.
For listening and speaking.
Picture this. You're standing in front of a painting that's 500 years old.
The pigment is cracking, the canvas shows its age, but somehow...
It's speaking to you, like a time machine made of brushstrokes.
I'm Mark, and that's exactly how I think about art sometimes.
And I'm Chloe. Welcome to our show where art meets culture.
Today we're exploring how paintings, sculptures, and stories shape who we are.
But first, Mark, do you really believe art is a time machine?
Well, think about it logically. What survives from ancient civilizations?
Their art. Cave paintings, sculptures, pottery.
Exactly. Buildings crumble, languages die, but someone's masterpiece endures.
You know what fascinates me about this? Different cultures have completely different concepts of what art even is.
What do you mean by that? Isn't art just art?
Not at all. In Western cultures, we separate art from function. We put paintings in frames, sculptures on pedestals.
But other cultures don't do that separation?
Exactly. In many African traditions, a beautifully carved bowl isn't separate from its function as a serving vessel.
The artistry and utility coexist naturally. It's not like we need a special art viewing moment.
Or think about Islamic geometric patterns. They cover everything from prayer rugs to architecture to manuscript illuminations.
Those patterns aren't just decoration D. They represent divine infinity, mathematical perfection.
The Western separation of art from function is actually relatively recent, maybe a few centuries old.
So before that, European artists were also making functional art?
Absolutely. Medieval illuminated manuscripts, decorated chalices, tapestries that told stories, and kept castles warm.
The concept of fine art versus craft is actually a modern invention then?
Pretty much. It came with industrialization. Suddenly mass-produced items made handcrafted objects seem more artistic.
And that hierarchy still affects how we value different forms of creativity today.
Exactly. A painting might sell for millions, while an equally skilled quilt maker struggles for recognition.
That's problematic, especially since traditional crafts often carry deeper cultural knowledge.
Right. A traditional weaver knows not just technique, but plant dyes, seasonal rhythms, storytelling traditions.
They're cultural encyclopedias in human form. When that knowledge disappears, we lose entire world views.
That gives me chills! And speaking of cultural loss, imagine looking at a fresco in Pompeii.
Those vibrant colors were the last thing someone saw before disaster struck.
See? That's what I mean. Art captures moments, feelings, entire worldviews.
But here's my devil's advocate question. Isn't art sometimes just decoration?
Mark, even decoration tells us about a culture's values and aesthetics.
Fair point. What someone considers beautiful reveals a lot about them.
Right, and that's where language comes in. Describing art builds vocabulary.
Like saying a painting is luminous versus just saying it's bright.
Or calling brushwork intricate instead of detailed. More precise, more expressive.
Okay, you've convinced me. Art isn't just pretty pictures on walls.
Before we dive deeper, hit that like button if you love art.
And tell us, what's the most powerful artwork you've ever seen?
Now, let's talk about where culture actually speaks to us.
Museums are the obvious choice, but they're not the only galleries.
Street art. Murals on building walls tell stories museums never could.
That's interesting. Museum curators carefully select what gets displayed.
Exactly. They control the narrative, decide what's worthy of preservation.
But street artists? They bypass that system completely.
Right. A mural about social justice appears overnight, speaks immediately.
Though I wonder, is that art or activism?
Why can't it be both? Art has always been political.
True. Think about commissioned portraits of kings and queens.
Pure propaganda, making rulers look powerful, divine, untouchable.
So, museums show us official history. Streets show us people's truth.
That's beautifully put. Museums preserve, streets provoke.
But let's be fair. Museums do exhibit contemporary art too.
True. Installation art can be rebellious, challenging, deeply symbolic.
I saw a performance art piece once that completely changed my perspective.
See? That's what I love about art. It transforms us.
Different spaces create different conversations between art and audience.
A gallery whispers, a subway wall shouts.
And both voices matter. They're documenting our cultural moment differently.
What about digital galleries? Instagram artists reaching millions instantly.
Now that's democratizing art. No curator, no commission needed.
Though it raises questions about quality control and artistic standards. Let me tell you about something I witnessed in Berlin that perfectly illustrates this difference.
Oh, this sounds good. What happened?
I was visiting the Pergamon Museum. Incredible ancient artifacts, very prestigious, very quiet.
The typical museum experience, hushed voices, careful observation.
Exactly. Then I walked outside, and there was this massive mural being created right on the museum wall.
Wait, directly on the museum building? That's bold.
It was commissioned. The museum invited street artists to comment on their collection themes.
So the institution was actively breaking down the barrier between official and unofficial art?
Exactly. And the energy was completely different. People were taking selfies, debating the meaning. Kids were drawing sketches.
That's fascinating. The art outside the museum was creating more engagement than the art inside.
It made me realize that museums don't have to be temples of quiet reverence. They can be living, breathing cultural conversations.
Who gets to decide what's art anyway? That's always been contentious.
Good point. Remember when photography wasn't considered real art?
Or jazz music being dismissed as noise by classical purists.
Art evolves, and so do the places where we encounter it.
Speaking of evolution, let's talk about how artists create meaning.
The materials and techniques they choose carry cultural weight too.
Okay, but isn't a paintbrush just a tool? How can that be cultural?
Think about traditional Chinese calligraphy. Every brushstroke has meaning.
Right, because the technique itself is part of cultural tradition.
Exactly. Or consider indigenous pottery. Clay connects to ancestral land.
I see what you mean. The medium becomes part of the message.
And pigments. Medieval artists used expensive ultramarine for sacred subjects.
Because blue was precious, reserved for depicting divine figures.
The cost of materials reflected social and spiritual hierarchies.
That's fascinating. So poverty might force artists into creative innovation?
Yes. Van Gogh mixed house paint when he couldn't afford artist colors.
And now those textured, vibrant paintings are priceless masterpieces.
Limitation breeds creativity. Look at graffiti artists using spray cans.
Cheap materials, but they've created an entirely new artistic movement. This makes me think about something else, the politics of materials. Who gets access to which artistic tools?
Oh, that's a great point. Art materials have always been tied to economic and social power structures.
Think about oil paints. They were expensive, so only wealthy patrons could commission oil paintings.
Which meant certain voices and perspectives were systematically excluded from the artistic record.
Women, working class people, entire ethnic groups, their artistic traditions were dismissed or forgotten.
But look at what happened when cheaper materials became available. Watercolors, pastels, eventually acrylics.
Suddenly you had artists creating outside the traditional academy system.
Take the Impressionists. They started using portable paint tubes, which let them paint outdoors away from stuffy studios.
And that simple technological change revolutionized art. Suddenly light and everyday scenes became worthy subjects.
And now we're seeing the same thing with digital tools. Suddenly anyone with a tablet can create sophisticated artwork.
Though traditional artists sometimes argue that digital art lacks the physical struggle and craftsmanship.
I think that's the same argument photography faced. It's not really art, it's just mechanical reproduction.
True. And now photography is fully accepted as fine art. Digital work probably just needs time to prove itself.
Plus, each era's materials tell us about their environmental concerns and resource availability.
How so? What do you mean by environmental concerns?
Well, today's artists are increasingly using recycled materials, addressing sustainability in their work.
Like sculptures made from ocean plastic or paintings using natural earth pigments instead of synthetic chemicals.
Exactly, just like how wartime artists used whatever they could find, Picasso painting on cardboard during rationing. What about techniques passed down through generations, like ceramics or weaving?
Those preserve cultural knowledge. Hands teaching hands across centuries.
Exactly. A tapestry isn't just decoration, it's cultural DNA.
Though machine production has changed everything, mass-produced versus handcrafted.
But that creates its own cultural statement, Andy Warhol's factory approach.
True. His silk screens reflected mass production culture perfectly.
And now, digital tools are creating new possibilities entirely.
Virtual reality art, AI-generated images, what does that mean culturally?
Maybe it reflects our relationship with technology, our digital existence.
The tools artists choose reveal the era they're living in.
From cave pigments to computer pixels, each era leaves its fingerprint.
Speaking of fingerprints, let's explore how art preserves historical memory.
This is where art becomes truly powerful as a witness to history.
But can we trust artistic representations? Artists have their own biases.
Of course they do, but that's exactly what makes art valuable.
How so? Bias seems like it would distort historical truth.
But it shows us how people felt about events, not just facts.
Emotional truth versus factual truth. Interesting distinction.
Think about Guernica. Picasso didn't paint realistic war scenes.
Right, but that abstract horror captured the brutality perfectly.
More powerfully than any photograph could. It's haunting, unforgettable.
Speaking of art addressing difficult times, I want to explore how artists process collective trauma.
That's such an important function of art, helping communities work through shared pain and loss.
Think about Holocaust memorials, or the AIDS memorial quilt, or Post-9 divided by 11 street murals.
Those are so different from traditional triumphant war monuments. They invite contemplation rather than celebration.
Right. Maya Lin's Vietnam Memorial was revolutionary because it acknowledged grief instead of glorifying war.
And it was so controversial initially. People expected something more traditional, more heroic.
But now it's become the model for meaningful memorial design, participatory, reflective, emotionally honest.
Art also helps us process ongoing social issues, climate change, inequality, pandemic experiences.
Like Banksy's pandemic artwork, or installations showing rising sea levels, or Black Lives Matter mural campaigns.
What I love is that art doesn't just document pain, it often points toward healing and resilience too.
So, art doesn't just record history, it interprets it, gives it meaning.
Exactly. And different cultures remember the same events differently through art.
That's why museums in different countries tell different stories.
The victor writes history, but art shows multiple perspectives.
What about art that challenges official historical narratives?
That's when art becomes dangerous to those in power.
Hence why authoritarian regimes always target artists first.
They understand art's power to shape collective memory and identity.
But art also preserves stories that might otherwise be lost.
Folk art, especially. Quilts that mapped escape routes on the Underground Railroad.
Hidden symbolism that preserved forbidden knowledge and resistance stories.
Art becomes a secret language when direct communication is impossible.
Religious iconography worked the same way for illiterate populations.
Cathedral frescoes were like visual encyclopedias of faith and morality.
Every image carefully chosen to communicate specific cultural values.
Which brings up an interesting question for our listeners.
What historical event would you want to see through an artist's eyes?
Comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on art as memory.
Now let's shift to something more intimate. Everyday art around us.
Yes! Not everything cultural hangs in a gallery frame.
Like what? Are you talking about interior design or something?
Think bigger. The clothes you wear, the food on your plate.
Fashion as art? I guess haute couture is basically wearable sculpture.
Even everyday fashion reflects cultural values. Conservative versus liberal societies.
Traditional dress preserves cultural identity across generations.
Exactly. A sari tells stories about Indian heritage, craftsmanship, regional differences.
And food presentation, is that really art or just cooking?
Mark, have you seen Japanese bento boxes? They're edible art.
Okay, fair point. The visual composition is incredibly intricate and deliberate.
And it reflects cultural values, harmony, balance, seasonal awareness.
What about folk traditions like holiday decorations or festivals?
Those are community art projects. Everyone participates in creating cultural beauty.
Day of the Dead altars, Christmas trees, wedding ceremonies.
Each one carefully designed to communicate meaning and bring people together.
I'm starting to see art everywhere now. Architecture, garden design.
Yes! And they all shape our daily experience of culture.
But some of this is mass-produced now. Does that diminish cultural value?
Not necessarily. It democratizes access to beauty and cultural participation.
Though handmade crafts do carry different emotional weight.
Absolutely. You can feel the maker's presence in handcrafted pottery.
That human connection is something machines can't replicate yet.
Which is why traditional crafts are experiencing a revival now.
People crave authentic cultural connection in our digital age. Let me ask you something that might sound obvious. What makes something artistic versus just functional?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question. I think it's about intention and attention to aesthetics.
So a mass-produced chair is functional, but a craftsperson who considers its form, proportions, wood grain becomes artistic?
I think it's more of a spectrum than a hard line. The craftsperson is making choices beyond pure utility.
Like choosing wood that creates interesting patterns, or adding subtle curves that feel better in the hand.
This gets really interesting with digital design, app interfaces, website layouts, even the fonts we read daily.
True, the typography on social media platforms actually affects how we process information and communicate.
Instagram's square format literally changed how photographers compose images, art influencing art. Speaking of connection, should we dive into our language workshop?
Great idea. Let's help our listener describe art more expressively.
Instead of saying something is beautiful, what richer words could we use?
Luminous, enchanting, breathtaking, sublime. They all carry different feelings.
Right. Luminous suggests light and radiance, while sublime implies spiritual awe.
What about when art makes us uncomfortable? How do we describe that?
Haunting, unsettling, provocative, disturbing. Each has subtle differences.
Haunting suggests lingering impact, while provocative implies intentional challenge.
And when discussing artistic techniques, we could say brushwork is bold or delicate.
Or describe composition as dynamic versus serene, or chaotic versus harmonious.
Let's practice. How would you describe Van Gogh's Starry Night?
I'd say it's turbulent yet luminous, with swirling, expressive brushstrokes.
Perfect. Turbulent captures the emotional energy much better than just swirly.
What about giving opinions? Instead of, I like this painting,
I find this painting compelling, or this piece resonates with me deeply.
I'm drawn to, or I'm struck by also sound more sophisticated. Let's get really practical here. How do we talk about artistic movement and energy?
Great question. Instead of saying a painting is busy, we could say it's dynamic or kinetic.
Or if something feels still but powerful, we might say it's monumental or contemplative.
And rhythm. Visual art can be staccato with sharp breaks or flowing with smooth transitions.
Let's practice with color. Instead of just bright red, what are some more nuanced descriptions?
Crimson, vermilion, scarlet each suggests different qualities. Crimson is deeper, vermilion more orange, tinted.
And colors carry cultural weight too. Royal blue versus navy blue suggests different social contexts.
What about texture vocabulary? Rough versus coarse versus gritty. They all describe different tactile experiences.
And for smooth surfaces, polished, silky, velvety, glossy, each evokes a different quality of smoothness.
Let's try another example. How would you describe Hokusai's Great Wave?
I'd say it's both menacing and graceful. The wave's foam resembles claws, but the overall composition feels balanced, almost musical.
Beautiful. And notice how you used menacing instead of scary. much more sophisticated and precise. And when discussing cultural significance, this artwork reflects or this piece suggests,
embodies, captures, reveals, they all work depending on your interpretation.
Let's try hypothetical situations. If you could commission any historical artwork.
If I could go back in time, I'd commission Leonardo to paint daily life.
Brilliant! If we had more documentation of ordinary people's experiences,
we'd understand those cultures more completely, not just the wealthy patrons.
This naturally leads us to our final topic, why art matters today.
Right. In our Instagram age, is traditional art still relevant?
More than ever. Art helps us process complex emotions and experiences.
But don't we have therapy for that? Or movies, music, books?
Art offers something unique, immediate, visceral connection without words.
I'll grant you that. Some feelings are beyond language.
And art validates experiences. Seeing your struggles reflected in creativity helps healing.
That makes sense. You're not alone, communicated through shared artistic expression.
Plus, art preserves cultural identity in an increasingly globalized world.
True. Indigenous communities use art to maintain traditional knowledge.
And marginalized voices find power through artistic expression and representation.
When traditional media ignores you, art becomes your megaphone.
Exactly, and it builds empathy by letting us see through others' eyes.
We could probably use more empathy in today's polarized world. I want to dig deeper into something. How does art actually change people's minds about important issues?
Art works differently than argument or logic shit. It reaches people emotionally first, then they think about the ideas.
Like how Uncle Tom's Cabin shaped attitudes about slavery, or how photographs from the civil rights movement galvanized support.
Or think about how films like Philadelphia or Brokeback Mountain shifted public opinion about LGBTQ plus rights.
What's the mechanism, though? Why does art succeed where political speeches sometimes fail?
Art bypasses our defensive mechanisms. We don't feel like we're being lectured, we're just experiencing a story or image.
So we drop our guard and become more open to new perspectives and empathy.
Of course, that same power can be used for harmful purposes, propaganda art, stereotypical representations.
Which raises important questions about artistic responsibility and media literacy.
This brings me back to art education. Shouldn't we be teaching people to be more critical consumers of visual culture?
Absolutely. Visual literacy is as important as reading literacy in our image-saturated world.
Teaching kids to recognize how advertising uses color psychology, or how camera angles influence our emotional response.
Or understanding how social media filters alter our perception of reality and beauty standards. Before we wrap up completely, I want to tackle one more big question. What about AI-generated art?
Oh, now that's the debate of our time. Can machines be truly creative, or are they just sophisticated copying machines?
That's what's fascinating to me. AI learns from existing artworks, recombines them in new ways. Isn't that what human artists do too?
But human artists have lived experiences, emotions, cultural context. They bring intention and personal meaning to their work.
True, but does the viewer experience the art differently if they don't know it was made by AI?
That's a great point. If I'm moved by a piece before learning it's AI generated, what does that say about the nature of artistic value?
And there's the economic question too. What happens to human artists when AI can produce art instantly and cheaply?
That's the urgent practical question. Will AI democratize art creation or just eliminate opportunities for human artists?
Maybe it depends on how we use it. AI as a tool to enhance human creativity versus AI as a replacement for human creativity.
I've seen artists using AI to generate initial concepts they then develop by hand, or to create backgrounds they paint over.
That sounds more like a partnership model, AI handling technical tasks while humans provide vision and emotional depth.
But this raises bigger questions about authenticity and cultural value. If anyone can generate art instantly, what makes something special?
Maybe we'll value human-made art more, not less. The handmade becomes precious when machine-made is common.
Speaking of contemporary issues, I'm fascinated by how global connectivity is changing art and cultural exchange.
You mean how artists can now see and be influenced by work from anywhere in the world instantly?
Exactly. But it's creating both incredible cross-cultural pollination and a risk of cultural homogenization.
Right. We get amazing fusion art forms, but do we lose distinct cultural identities in the process?
Think about K-pop aesthetics influencing Western music videos or anime styles showing up in European graphic novels.
That's beautiful cultural exchange, but then you also see the same Instagram aesthetic everywhere, regardless of local tradition.
I wonder if younger artists feel pressure to create globally appealing work versus deeply local, culturally specific art.
That's a real dilemma. Do you risk being too niche for global platforms, or do you dilute your cultural specificity?
This is pushing museums to rethink their collections too. Western institutions are finally recognizing they've been telling incomplete stories.
Right, all those universal art history timelines were really just European timelines with everything else as footnotes.
And now there's the whole movement around returning artifacts to their countries of origin. The Parthenon marbles, Egyptian artifacts.
That's complicated, though. Some argue that major museums make art accessible to global audiences who couldn't otherwise see it.
But others say that removes art from its original cultural context and continues colonial relationships.
Digital technology might offer some solutions: virtual museum tours, high-resolution digital archives, accessible worldwide.
True, but can a digital reproduction ever match the experience of standing in front of the actual painting?
The presence, the scale, the texture, there's definitely something irreplaceable about the physical encounter.
But digital tech is also creating entirely new art forms, virtual reality installations, interactive digital sculptures, NFT art.
NFTs were such a wild phenomenon. Digital art suddenly worth millions, then crashing. What was that really about?
I think it revealed our anxiety about value and authenticity in the digital age. If everything can be copied, what makes something valuable?
And there's something deeply human about wanting to own the original, even if it's just a digital certificate.
Let's shift to something I'm passionate about, how artists are responding to climate change and environmental crisis.
This is where art becomes urgently relevant, helping people emotionally comprehend a crisis too big to grasp intellectually.
Like Olafur Eliasson's ice installations melting in real time, or aerial photos showing before and after deforestation.
Those images hit you in the gut in a way that statistics about carbon emissions just don't.
And artists are rethinking their own practices using local materials, renewable processes, ephemeral installations that leave no trace.
It's making artists question everything. Is it ethical to ship artworks internationally? To use resource-intensive materials?
This could fundamentally change how we think about permanence in art. Maybe impermanence becomes a virtue, not a limitation.
Here's another thorny contemporary issue. Where's the line between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation in art?
Oh, that's such a difficult navigation. Artists have always borrowed from other cultures, but power dynamics make it complicated.
Is it about economic benefit? When a wealthy Western artist profits from traditional indigenous designs without giving back?
Partly, yes. And about whether sacred or ceremonial elements are being used without understanding or permission.
So context and intent matter? A respectful collaboration feels different than just taking surface elements?
Exactly. Are you working with communities, sharing credit and benefits, or just mining their aesthetics for your own gain?
But in our globalized world, where do influences end and identities begin? We're all culturally mixed now.
Before we start wrapping up, I want to touch on something really important: art and mental health.
Yes! Both how creating art can be therapeutic and how art helps us understand mental health experiences.
There's something about the creative process that bypasses our usual mental blocks. It accesses emotions we can't verbalize.
Right. Drawing your anxiety or sculpting your grief gives form to formless feelings.
And when artists share their mental health struggles through their work, it normalizes these experiences for others.
Like Yayoi Kusama's Infinity Rooms dealing with her hallucinations, or Tracy Emin's raw honesty about trauma and depression.
Those works tell people you're not alone in feeling this way, which can be incredibly healing and validating.
Actually, before we finish, I want to explore one more area that's really close to my heart, community art and participatory projects.
Oh, yes, art that doesn't just reflect community, but actually builds it. That's powerful stuff.
like community murals where everyone from kids to seniors contributes a piece, or neighborhood gardens designed as collaborative artworks.
Those projects do something magical. They transform people from passive consumers of art into active creators and stakeholders.
And it breaks down barriers. Suddenly, the shy teenager and the retired teacher are collaborating on something beautiful.
I've seen incredible community art therapy programs, veterans, survivors of trauma, people in recovery, all creating together.
There's something about creating alongside others that helps people feel less isolated in their struggles.
And now digital tools are creating new possibilities, virtual collaborative art projects, global community murals created online.
Though I imagine coordinating these projects can be incredibly complex, managing different skill levels, competing visions, logistics.
Absolutely. It requires skilled facilitators who can balance artistic vision with democratic participation. Not easy.
You know what I keep wondering about? What will art and culture look like 50 years from now?
That's fascinating to consider. Will we still have physical art galleries, or will everything be virtual and interactive?
Maybe we'll have hybrid spaces, physical artworks you can manipulate with AR, or installations that respond to your biometric data.
Climate change will definitely force major changes. International art shipping might become prohibitively expensive or environmentally unacceptable.
So we might see more truly regional art ecosystems developing, with less global circulation of physical works.
And think about demographic changes. Gen Z and younger generations have completely different relationships with digital media and identity.
Right, they expect art to be interactive, shareable, immediately accessible. The idea of quietly contemplating a painting might seem foreign.
But maybe that's not necessarily a loss. Maybe they're developing new forms of deep engagement we don't fully understand yet.
Global migration will probably create increasingly hybrid art forms, artists carrying multiple cultural influences from birth.
Which might make the whole conversation about cultural appropriation more complex when everyone's culture is already mixed.
Let me shift gears and give our listeners some practical advice. How can someone who feels intimidated by art start engaging with it?
Art creates bridges between different communities and experiences.
What about education? Does art still have a place in schools?
Critical thinking, creativity, cultural awareness, art teaches essential life skills.
Plus, it makes learning more memorable and engaging for students.
And let's not forget, beauty matters. Art enriches our daily environment.
I suppose life would be pretty gray without artistic expression.
Exactly. From public sculptures to graphic design, art surrounds us.
Even this podcast logo was designed by an artist.
Art isn't separate from life. It is life, just viewed more intentionally.
You've convinced me, Chloe. Art really is our cultural heartbeat.
And it keeps beating, evolving, responding to each generation's needs.
From cave paintings to digital installations, the impulse remains constant.
Humans need to create, to express, to connect through shared beauty.
That's a beautiful way to end our exploration of art and culture.
Thanks for joining us. Share this episode if it inspired you.
And remember, you don't need a museum to experience art.
Look around you with artistic eyes. Culture is everywhere, waiting to be discovered.
Until next time, keep exploring the beautiful intersection of art and life.